settle down. Okay, so I want to welcome everybody here. And we have a small, very short and interesting program on the agenda. Please feel free to keep eating and drinking. After all, it is Thursday and the weekend starts now. Okay, so I want to welcome everybody here, and especially our colleagues and friends from facilities and Gilbane and HDR, the people who really built this. This is a thank you event. Thank you from those of us in the academic part, in academic affairs, to those of you who built this building, and to express our appreciation for what was accomplished here. So I have a little bit to say, and then we're going to pass the mic around to a few people. So I think it would be interesting for those of you who don't know all the history of this physical science project, the Physical Sciences Complex project, how it was started. So it turns out this project started in 1999 when a character named Jordan Goodman, who is sitting down, which is rare for him, became chair of physics. And he became chair of physics because we made him become chair of physics. And because it's a really awful job. I am chair of physics now. In 1999, Jordan was in his late 40s. So that gives you an idea of how long ago that really was. I was associate chair for facilities, and I was only 45 years old, which is mind-blowing. Kind of sad, but it is what it is. Now, the first critical step in getting this building built was for Steve Halpern, the dean at the time, to get behind it. Halpern was, he had just started, and he, to give you an idea of how long ago 1999 was, he was in his 50s. He's old. He's not. We have a tradition of making fun of him. So we actually, at the time when he started, we had no idea of who he was. You know, you get a new dean, he's from outside, you kind of worry, right? Because you figure, well, the best that can happen is that he won't screw things up. I remember a conversation Jordan and I had. We went to some meeting in the dean's office, and I think it was this meeting where we talked about the PSC, but it was my first time meeting Steve, and we walked back together, and I said, what do you think? And he said, I don't know, what do you think? And I said, I don't know. But we both agreed that he was either going to be really bad or really good. And he was really good for most things. For us, anyway, he was really good, because here we are. So in December of 1999, Jordan and I put together a PowerPoint to show the dean why we need a new physics building. And I'm going to switch to that PowerPoint now so you can see a little bit of it. So if you can gather around, you can see this a little bit. So it says Physics Department, Physical Plant. We didn't have a name for it. Come on around so you can see. Okay, so what we asked for was a new physics building. Astronomy was just sort of a gleam in somebody's eye. and we had really good reasons to ask for a new physics building, and these were the reasons. The old physics building was built in 1950, and it's quite a story how you take a building built in 1950, which had no air conditioning, it had heat. It had one classroom, and 5 old guys in bow ties were professors there. And they turned that into this powerhouse, which, a physics powerhouse that required this new building. So this is the point that we were trying to make. And here's a picture of the old building. This was the original half of the old building, the south wing, before the fourth floor was put on it. And I remember looking at a book, I guess I was looking at a newsletter from the time. I think the thing cost like $2 or $3 million. That's what the appropriation was. So we described the department and all the areas, you know, because the dean likes numbers. He's a mathematician. He thought he knew about numbers, so we had to put in a bunch of numbers. And here's the physics department, and we said that it's building 082, that's the designation for the total physics building, that it was really falling apart. And we have pictures of it. So here are some of the pictures of the physics department. And it's just great, you know, that we had these pictures, because pictures are worth 1,000 words, right? And we were able to go and talk to the dean and other people in the college who really had no idea how bad this building was. So we showed them all these pictures. This is great. This is like a basement. You can't see them. This one on the right is a basement wall, and there's some gunk leaching through the walls. And I think it was yellow until they painted over it. And yellow is the color of mold that's found correlated with Legionnaire's disease. So we were really thrilled about that. Here's just some more pictures. The building was in bad shape. And so we went through this. So this was the original PowerPoint. Here, oh, this is great. Here's fuses in the circuit boxes. You know, fuses. I mean, this building was a museum. So we discussed all these things. Pests, oh yeah, here. Pests, roaches and mice. And,
you always have those.
And we're physicists and not biologists.
Now you have astronomers.
HVAC. Okay, so we made this proposal, and the dean, actually the dean bought it. He decided that he would support it. What was really going on at the time was that when he became dean, he looked around at the capital budget for buildings at this university for the 5-year or 10-year plan, and he saw nothing for his college. And so he screamed bloody murder, and he said, you know, well, you know Steve Halpern. God, I wish he was here. He pushed really hard to get a building. And what happened was that the provost said, well, what do you want, physics or computer science? And even a mathematician understood why it was that physics was the right choice. So this was a big step. This happened around 2000, 2001, something like that, around 2001. So he chose us over computer science, and I think part of the reason why he did that is because he realized that if he chose computer science, he'd have to deal with Jordan in a much more difficult way than if he chose physics. So he chose this building because of Jordan. Okay, at the time the provost was a guy named Greg Joffrey, who went on to become president of Iowa State University. He's had a long distinguished career as a chemist and as an academic administrator, and he took the proposal from campus, from Halpern, and decided that, and looked at the numbers, and I think Arnot and company, I don't know if Arnot you made it. So people advised him that these crazy physicists, if you build this building, it's the entire capital budget system of Maryland in 1 year. This was back in the time when a building was on 1 year's capital budget, even if it took 3 years to build. And so the university leadership said, no, we can't build you that building, because the president of this university, Moat, right, was not going to fight with all the other presidents and the chancellor to get the entire CIP budget for the year at some date to do it. He said it would never happen and you'd never get it. So we were kind of worried. We thought we were sort of dead in the water. And then the idea came, and then two critical ideas happened that caused it to work. the first idea was that, okay, so I used to have like a quarterly poker game when I was younger, and it was just an excuse so that I wouldn't have to deal with my kids at night. And Jordan played, a bunch of people came over, and one day I was on some committee with the provost, and I said something like, you know, based on the kind of things that you say at these committees, I think you would be a good poker player. And he said, yeah, I love poker. So he started coming over to the games, and he loved to brew his own beer. So Joffrey would come over with his own beer, and we would drink his beer and take his money. And no, he was okay. He was okay poker player, but I think he wasn't great. One night after the poker game, Jordan and Joffrey and I were talking out on my front porch about this, and we were whining about him not wanting to do the whole building. And so I don't remember which one of us suggested this, but one of us said, why don't you do it in 2 phases? Never been done before. And he said, he thought about it, and he said, send me a proposal, right? And that's sort of how this idea of doing this building in 2 phases came about. Now, this is a very dangerous thing to do for a physics department, because you build 2 phases, and if it's permanent, it really doesn't help the physics department. It probably helps it on the whole, but it helps some of it a lot, and it hurts another part that gets left behind. But we decided that, you know, we were not going to we're just too big a department to get a building on the whole department, and that we would take this chance and do it. The other thing that happened that caused this building project to come to fruition was the idea of including astronomy and IPS, which made it sort of, you know, interdisciplinary. You know, the campus leadership they're not too bright. And, you know, we used to be physics and astronomy, and when we divorced in 1989, now we do things together, it's interdisciplinary. So they fell for that. And then JQI, the Joint Quantum Institute, started snowballing, and it really was, you know, it was successful beyond anybody's expectation. And we made that a central part of it. So this whole idea of you want something, and you're not getting it. The way to do it is to make friends and get more people to help you to support it. And that was what it took. And it put it over the top, and then we have the building approved. So, okay, so. Okay, so now what happened next was that the campus had to figure out a sort of a, you know, architects and go out for architects, and they had to do their planning, and Arshad worked on it, and Bob and company worked on it, and costed the building. And what happened was that the college set up a series of meetings with a small group of people from facilities and from academic affairs, from those of us in the college that had a lot of stake in this, to meet periodically to go over aspects of the building and how it should be designed, you know, the devils in the details and so on. And this was actually a brilliant move. And even though I don't know that Steve thought I was brilliant at the time. Because, you know, it really is true that, I mean, the campus has built many fine buildings. And you can look at things like Clarice Smith and the B School. There's lots of examples of incredibly fine buildings. But this building is unusual. This is the largest academic building ever built in the system, I believe is true. And this required, in order to build this thing so that it had the impact that we wanted it to, you need a partnership between the facilities people and the academic people. And we're sort of from a different culture than those of us in academics are. You know, we're not really people who bounce against the walls, but we're closer to that than we are closer to professionals like you from facilities who know what you're doing. So we had these series of meetings where we got together and went over the details. The facilities people, Bob and company, very professional, you guys. Build a building on budget, on time, and our goal was to build a building that would have an impact, bring people to the university who you wouldn't get otherwise. And sometimes that collided, and you needed, because we would ask for things that looks like it's over budget or wouldn't meet requirements, and like the windows open. That was that was a lot of fun. And so we had a real struggle at first to figure out how to deal with each other. But I have to hand it to you guys in facilities that you figured out how to stomach us and how to be patient and how to sit there and think, okay, I think I know what you guys are wanting to do. Let's figure out how to do it. And we tried to meet you halfway as well. And in my opinion, this is a phenomenally successful partnership that is going to make things a lot easier in the future to build awesome buildings at this university the way you've done this now with PSC. So this is the lesson, I believe, in building this building, is that these partnerships can work, but you have to try, and you have to be flexible, and you have to take into account what the other side is trying to accomplish, and then you can meet people halfway. So this place is full of compromises, but I think the compromises worked. And the facilities, people from FM, those of you from FM, you did a superb job, and we want to thank you. Now, we also want to thank our friends from Gilbane, and anybody from Gilbane here? Okay. And you people built this thing, and you built it on time, and you didn't make any mistakes. And that is not an easy thing to do in a building this complex. I especially want to thank our friends at HDR who listened to what we wanted. And you know, as you can see from me, we're not the most expressive. Communication is difficult. But you guys from HDR really listened and figured out what we were saying. Especially not, the thing about the labs, that's specifications, you can do that. But the thing about, the ellipse and the collaborations and the way this building is set up, with the lobby and this, you did a superb job, and we really want to thank you for that. That was just awesome. I'd like to especially thank Brian Kowalczyk. Is Brian here?
Brian couldn't make that a power problem on the train. He was on his way down and he's stuck in Philly.
That's horrible.
He was really upset.
Okay, but we definitely want to thank in particular Michael Winkler, he was the project manager for this.
Yeah.
And Isabel. I saw Isabel earlier. Isabel live here. I still see Isabel sitting in the building, clicking away on her phone. Apparently, there's a lot more work to do. You guys did a fantastic job. Okay, one more person I'd like to thank in particular is Bob Marnazzi, standing right here. So Bob, what can I say other than you did an amazing job, and you were probably in your 30s, right? 20s. I mean, you didn't even have kids at the time.
That's great.
Bob learned a lot. About what? Ask Bob. But Bob is fantastic, and a consummate professional, a brilliant technical person, and a superb project manager. So I'd like to thank, on behalf of everybody from Academic Affairs, I'd like to thank Bob, and we have a little present for you. So let's have a round of applause for Bob, and then Okay, so this is for you, and this is a copy of it. We're going to try and hang this up here somewhere so it doesn't get stolen. This is really, this is a plaque for facilities people on this campus for going beyond the job and doing something that's just absolutely awesome and amazing. And so we really want to thank you for this. This is yours to keep, bring home and show your kids. Okay, so I'm going to let a few other people speak, and you'll be one of them. First, I want to ask Stu Vogel, who represents astronomy, to come up and say a few things.
So
these are all supposed to be brief remarks. Following through, I know that will not be the case. Actually, can you put the PowerPoint off and bring back to me the pictures?
Which one do you want?
The original that was back up there. Going through.
Well, the movie?
Yeah, or whatever, anything but the PowerPoint. Okay, so we moved into this beautiful building just a couple of months ago, and that was after a 3.5 year construction project. And as Drew mentioned, I don't think the schedule slipped more than a week or so during that 3.5 years. A lot of reasons for that, obviously, but most importantly was the excellent project management that we had. He also mentioned that it was also on budget or under budget, and again, that's I think pretty amazing, and that's just really a testament to the excellent project management. We have a ton of thanks to give out here, obviously to the taxpayers of the state of Maryland, and we footed most of the bill, not all of the bill, as I guess Steve also mentioned. I will point out that the Department of Astronomy alone brings in more than $25 million a year in federal funding here. And by the usual multiplier of how much economic activity research generates, that means that we generate more economic activity than this building costs every single year. So that's obviously practiced pretty highly in the state's reasoning for this. HDR, the architects, designed just an absolutely spectacular building. I mean, every time people come into this building, they just go, wow. I think you probably did too. You have Brian, who I guess is what Philly said, and Michael Winkler. Gene Harley is here, who was worked with a lot of the labs downstairs. Michael, I said Brian. You're Mike. And of course Isabel, who was here for almost the entire 7 years of the design phase of this project, and really did a spectacular job. We have Gilbane, the general contractor. I mean, is Mike Curry here? He was on site. I don't know, is Mike? Mike, thank you. Mike was the guy on the site running things here throughout the project. And I'm sorry, I forget. Ted. Yeah, Ted was the project manager, is that correct? And ran the project, again, executing it simply beautifully. And then, of course, facilities management. This is just an extraordinarily complex project. You had to get a lot of ducks in a row. It all worked on schedule, under budget, just amazing. And of course, Jordan. Drew mentioned Jordan. Jordan has probably fought for he's backing up right now, but Jordan probably fought for this project longer and harder than anybody else, not only on campus, dining with the provost, with the university system to get it to the top of the university's queue in Annapolis, and so we owe a huge debt of thanks to Jordan. But really, most of all, it's Bob Martinazzi, the PSC project manager for the building. You mentioned it already, but he had to deal with the Department of Physics, which is no easy task, and the Department of Astronomy. I mean, we're not quite like physics. Anyway, thanks for delivering an absolutely spectacular building. We're really proud and grateful to be in this building. And thanks to you and all the facilities management for delivering this building. That's all. Is Raj Roy here? Anybody for hips? Okay. Jordan.
Well, I too want to add my thanks to all the people who worked so hard to get to actually build this building and to take what, one person his name hasn't been mentioned, is Fred, who was the person who was Wellston, who actually was the detail person who you give us a book of plans this big and he'll tell you left an outlet out on the floor someplace and came here every day and watched the building and made sure that everything was going the way the physicists wanted to go. But the things that are extraordinary to me are that we actually got it built, that Bob and I didn't kill each other, and became good friends in this process, which I think is something, there were times you wouldn't have thought that in the beginning. But I just want to relate a couple quick things, which was first off about our visioning meeting about the building. Because when the architects came to us and we finally said, what is your vision for this building? And I remember my comments, and I think what's amazing is that they were able to take those into reality, is we met in the A.V. Williams building. And those of you who know A.V. Williams, we met in the conference room, and I said, I'm not 100% sure what our vision is, but I know that when you're done with this meeting, if you walk around A.V. Williams and you look around, if anything in the new building looks like anything in this building, you know you have failed. Well, I think in the physics terms, they built the anti-A.V. Williams building. That's what you're standing in here. And they were able to convert that vision into something which I think is absolutely the case. The other story that Drew didn't really mention is what finally pushed this building over the top, getting it started, which was the fact that we had every member of the state legislature through the toll building, and to show them what a dump it was. And it occurred, this pivotal event occurred on a warm day in February when the governor came to play golf with Gary Williams, Governor Ehrlich. And as you may remember, Governor Ehrlich was Republican, and most of the legislators were Democrats. And the governor, after playing golf, Gary convinced him that the golf course needed a couple $1 million of renovation. And his thought was, well, that's what I'm going to put in the capital budget for the University of Maryland next year is the golf course renovation. And the legislature, of course, wanted to pick up the biggest object they could find to hit the governor over the head with. And their first response was, what about the physics building? You want to build a golf course? They need a physics building. So ahead of the original schedule, they voted $1 million to start planning on the building. And that was the seminal event. So if you take the physics analogy, it's like a pendulum. It doesn't matter which way you push it, as long as it starts moving. And this is the net result. And I just want to thank all of you for all of your efforts in putting this together. And of course, we're only half done. Because phase 2, as Drew mentioned, is the critical phase to get the rest of the department going. And now that we have this building, all of you who know people who have lots of money who want to put their name on the building, I have a feeling we can get a name up in an afternoon under the right circumstances. So thank you all.
Okay, I'm Steve Ralston, Director of JQI. I just wanted to say a few words. One about the architects. So Jordan and I were actually on the committee that selected the architect. And I don't know if Jordan remembers this, but when you were CUH2A before you were HDR, when they came in for their presentation, they had a model. And if we showed you the model right now, it would pretty much look like the building. So I'm impressed. Either you had a great vision or you're very stubborn, or both. But that model in the end was really why you got selected. And so, it's amazing how your vision was realized here. And then, the other thing, coming back to Bob, I looked back at my email today, searched on Mark Massey to see the oldest email. And I had an email from 2006, which tells you how long it takes to actually start building a building, from Linda Clark, who was Bob's boss, which said, we're really lucky we got this project manager. He had left the university, but realized it was a mistake. And now he's available again. His name's Bob Martinez. And I'm wondering when Bob first came back and started dealing with physics, whether he thought he made a second mistake.
Too late.
Too late. But so I think one thing Bob learned was dealing with physicists is not like dealing with biologists. I know he was the project manager on BRB, and there he met with biologists. They said, we want some labs. They came back 5 years later, and he handed in the keys. We weren't like that. And I think maybe the most important thing Bob learned was the difference between a theorist and an experiment. And so I would just like to join with Drew, Jordan, Stu, everyone, and to thank Gilbane, HDR, CUH2A, and FM for a fantastic program.
The one and only.
Yes. Okay,
Go for it.
so I'm going to start off on a little different tack. Everybody's, it's a great building, we all know that. But I want everybody to, there's a lot more people than just HDR, just Gilbane, that's involved in this project. One department that we keep missing is procurement and supply. So we have Jeff Cohen and Rex Fitch back here. Without them, we have no money, we have no money. Both of them helped in many, many ways to make sure this project continued. So that's part of why I'm successful, is just because of the people that work with me. And so from the design team, we have HDR, which if you're with HDR, raise your hand. We also have Hope Fjord, Mahan Reichel, Lance Bailey, anybody else on the design team, please raise your hand. Simon, he's one of the designers that worked with Brian. So if you see these people, tell them thanks. There's a lot more than the few people that were mentioned. Likewise, on Gilbane's side, we don't have any of the actual constructors that worked here, but Gilbane and their management staff. Without them, we wouldn't have this beautiful building either. So if you're with Gilbane or any of that associated with the construction, please raise your hand. Thank you. And then, last but not least is facilities management. There's so many groups. It starts with Arnot in planning. If it's not for him getting it, convincing somebody that needs to go somewhere, we don't get the money. It works all the way through capital projects, who I work for. So if you're with facilities management, raise your hand. I have a whole team here, and I'm not going to name everybody's name. But as you can see, this plaque is about everybody that has worked here, worked on the project. Now, in terms of physics, the one thing I think Drew mentioned, he said we met halfway. Well, remember, he's a physicist, and so quantum mechanics, halfway is not what you think it is. It's funny that he mentioned the poker game, too, because Jordan, one of the things that Jordan did not get out of this building that he absolutely wanted was the balcony. Drew lost that in a bet to me, so we know how that works.
Or the roof garden.
Or the roof garden, right, exactly.
That's still coming. Beer garden's still coming.
Yeah, we changed the keys, so. So again, it was because of physics, astronomy, and IPSD, and eventually JQI. Your interaction, yes, it was painful. Very painful. We got to the point one time, I'll just real digress. When we got to the bottom of the hole, we had a bottoming out party for all the contractors that had gotten that far. They were up talking about safety, because safety is important. And the thing about safety is you say, how many accidents you had. And at that point, we had 0 lost time accidents. Jordan came up to me and said, would it have counted as an accident if I would have killed you during design? And my response was, I felt the same way. So it goes both ways. But I think we worked well together. I think it turned out to be a great facility. I know the labs are getting customized so people can start moving in. I hope some great physics and astronomy and JQI and all whatever else you do, which I've never understood it, so happens. I hope it meets everybody's needs. The video wall worked out great. And I want to thank everybody for having this, for everybody that worked on the team, because very rarely, we build the building, turn the keys over, and next thing you know, we're on our next project. And that goes for the design team, the construction manager, and facilities management. So thanks for having us, thanks for thanking us, and I hope you enjoyed it.
Again, let me tell you, I'm Michael Winkler, I'm with HCR, and we're the architects and engineers, and I've got a few consultants here to help us with this. I remember one of the first meetings we had. I can't hear you over there, so. I remember the first meeting we had. The Dean Halpern said to us, listen, whatever you do, when you design this building, I want to make the Kim Engineering people jealous. Whatever you do, that's the #1 thing you have to do. So when we had our programming meeting, we had all these heads. We had Drew, we had Jordan, we had Steve, we had Stuart, we had Fred, and they're all sitting around this table ready to jump into this program that they were working on for so many years. And they started, and before they started, June Hanley, our lab planner, said, listen, you guys are going to make decisions, and if you don't make decisions in a timely manner, I will. And somebody said to me, does she always do that to clients? And I said, oh, you have no idea. But you won't go wrong if you listen to her. So there's a lot of people I could thank here. One thing, though, I have to thank is Bob, like everybody else said, and the department heads. This group of people pulled together in the university side and hung to things that they really, as an architect that I've seen through the state of Maryland, can't get done, and they got it done. And one of the things is plaza. The state of Maryland has rules that said, we do not elevate buildings and you're not going to get them improved. And they really fought us on it, but these guys said, listen, if we force students around this block we're gonna lose any interaction we have. You gotta save the plaza. The plaza is so important, and if you can see from this point, this is great. But then the university's review board said, we don't want this thing to be crazy looking, we don't want it to do it. So Brian Kowalczyk, the designer that wasn't here, he basically said, well, we're gonna make a surprise. And this ellipse is the surprise. We're gonna look a little bit different from outside, but when you walk through this, he wanted an impact. And he wanted the students, and the reaction he's getting from these students is exactly what Brian wanted for this project. Now, like I said, I've worked with many universities. I've been doing this since the early 90s. And I tell you, I cannot tell you that there is no university that's ever worked this well together with a design team and a contractor. And Gilbane, if you see the Gilbane people today, I'm telling you, these guys are A1. They are the top notch, and they've done a phenomenal job on this. Let me tell you, this meant about working with team. And two people I want to touch base on really specifically, Simon Trumbull. Simon Trumbull was the main guy working with Brian Kowalczyk, our lead designer. And Simon made sure that all these things, and I was probably the biggest pain in the butt to Simon through this whole process that we did. We hung tight, and he made sure that these people, everybody here got the building that you see today. And this wouldn't have ever happened if it wasn't for Isabel Alman. She was a project architect, and she pushed this thing through to a point where halfway through construction, they weren't even talking to me anymore. They were just like, well, did Isabel say that was okay? Or what did Isabel say? So I'm telling you, the team's here, everybody involved. This was a phenomenal project. And I thank all of you for including us. And as I'm telling you right now to the department heads, do whatever you can to get phase 2, because definitely, I can tell you there's two groups here, us and Gilbane, that would love to do it. And Rex, thanks a lot. This was great.
Okay, I think we're done, but there's still food and drink, so consume.